Breaking news now. Police are investigating a deadly stabbing in Manhattanville. Chopper 2 was over the scene earlier this morning along West 129th Street. Police say around 4:30 this morning they responded to a call of an assault and found a 47-year-old woman who had been stabbed multiple times. She was taken to the hospital where she died. No arrests have been made and the investigation is ongoing.
2 hours. That's how long he sat there in the dark, waiting. Not pacing, not second-guessing, just waiting. And when Carmen Yadira Lopez finally came home that Monday morning, those 4 boys of hers, they had no idea they'd just lost their mother. Like, this man really sat there for 2 whole hours planning her death. Make it make sense. You know where you at. You're watching Shadowed Crimes TV. We tell the stories that need to be told. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, and the lives lost behind closed doors. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the truth. If you're new here, subscribe and join us as we shed light on shadowed stories. Carmen Yadira Lopez was 47 years old, living in Harlem on West 129th Street. A mother of 4 boys, not 3, not 5, 4 sons who depended on her for everything. And if you ask anybody who knew Carmen, they'll tell you the same thing. To know her was to love her. That's not just something people say at funerals. That was Carmen. She was the type of woman who lit up a room. Happy, full of life. The kind of mother who made sure her boys had what they needed, even when things got hard. Her friend Areli described her as someone who just radiated joy. She was a happy person, Areli said. No drama, no mess, just a woman trying to live her life and raise her sons right. Carmen worked. She came and went. Neighbors in her building knew her as someone who kept to herself but was always respectful, always kind. She wasn't out here looking for trouble. She wasn't one of those people caught up in the streets or bringing chaos to her doorstep. She was just trying to make it, like everybody else. But here's the thing about being a woman just trying to live. Sometimes the danger finds you anyway. His name was Marquez, Carmen's ex-boyfriend. And when I say ex, I mean she had already walked away from this man. She had already said no. She had already made it clear that whatever they had was over. But Marquez? He wasn't hearing that. He couldn't accept it. Areli remembered seeing them once at a club. She saw the way Marquez looked at Carmen that night. The way he tried to get her attention. The way he was looking at her in the club. It was like, oh, like you're my girl. Like, come here, come here. That possessive energy. That ownership mentality. Like Carmen belonged to him and he could just summon her whenever he felt like it. And Carmen? She wasn't having it. She was like, no, you know, Areli recalled. She shut it down. Right there in front of everybody, no hesitation, no second thoughts, just no. Now, you would think that would have been the end of it, right? A man gets rejected at the club, he licks his wounds, he moves on. But that's not what happened here. Because some men, they don't know how to take no for an answer. Some men think that no is just a temporary obstacle, a challenge, something to get around. Carmen didn't seem worried about Marquez after that night. Why would she? She had said her piece. She had drawn her line. In her mind, it was done. She had 4 boys to worry about, a life to live. She wasn't about to waste energy on a man who couldn't respect her boundaries. But Marquez? He was stuck, fixated. And when a man can't let go, when he can't accept that a woman has the right to walk away, that's when things get dangerous. That's when rejection turns into obsession. That's when love turns into something else entirely. Carmen's family would later say they wish they had known more about Marquez. They wish they had known what kind of man he really was. Her aunt spoke through tears at the vigil, saying if they had only known anything about him, they would have done everything to protect her. Everything. But how do you protect someone from A threat you don't even know exists? How do you guard against a man who's been planning, waiting, watching? Carmen thought she had moved on. She thought she was safe. She thought no meant no. She had no idea that on one cold Monday morning, Marquez would prove just how wrong she was. Sunday night rolled into Monday morning. Most people in that Harlem building were asleep. Working folks getting rest before another week started. Kids tucked in bed. The world quiet, except for the occasional car passing by outside, and Marquez was already inside. Surveillance cameras caught him entering the building on West 129th Street. He had a mask on, moving through the hallways like he had every right to be there. Building workers would later say he somehow snuck in, found a spot, and just posted up, waiting. Here's what gets me. He didn't rush this. He didn't act on impulse or rage in the moment. No. This man sat there in that building for over 2 hours. 2 hours. Think about that. Think about sitting in one spot for that long with nothing but your thoughts and your plan. Most people can't sit still for 5 minutes. But Marquez? He had the patience of someone who had made up his mind about what he was going to do. A neighbor spotted him earlier, sitting on the stoop, outside. Just sitting there, watching. Nobody thought anything of it because, people sit outside buildings all the time in New York. But he wasn't just passing time. He was waiting for her. And then, around 4:30 in the morning, Carmen came home. She climbed those stairs, probably tired from whatever had kept her out. Maybe she was thinking about getting a few hours of sleep before her boys woke up. Maybe she was thinking about what she needed to do that day. She had no reason to think anything was wrong. This was her building, her home, her safe place. But Marquez was there, on that 3rd floor, waiting in the shadows. What happened next was heard throughout the building. Carmen's screams cut through the early morning silence. Loud, desperate, terrified. She was yelling, begging. Neighbors woke up to the sound of her voice echoing in that stairwell. He stabbed her. Not once, not twice, over 20 times. And she begged him to stop. Stop! Please, stop! Can you... Imagine. Begging for your life from someone who once claimed to love you, someone you once trusted, and he just kept going, kept stabbing, kept taking pieces of her life away with every single thrust of that knife. A neighbor later said they heard the screaming but thought it was just another argument. People in the building had loud arguments sometimes, they said. It wasn't unusual. So they didn't call the police, they didn't check, they just rolled over and tried to go back to sleep. But this wasn't an argument. This was murder. Carmen tried to run. She made it a little ways down that hallway, leaving a trail behind her. But her body was giving out. One witness described seeing her stumble, trying to keep going, and then she just collapsed, right there in the middle of the floor. Steps away from her apartment door, steps away from where her 4 boys were probably sleeping, not knowing their mother was dying just outside. By the time the building porter came through on his rounds around 4:30, it was already over. He turned that corner on the 3rd floor and saw her. Carmen Yadira Lopez, 47 years old, mother of 4, laying there lifeless, blood everywhere. He knew immediately. She was passed away, he'd later tell investigators. There was no question, no hope. She was gone. The porter called 911. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but there was nothing they could do. Carmen had been stabbed roughly 18 to 20 times. The attack was vicious, personal. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't random violence. This was rage. This was someone who wanted her dead and made sure of it. Police descended on that building fast. They started canvassing immediately, knocking on doors, asking questions. Some neighbors were still shaken from the screams they'd heard. Others hadn't heard anything at all. But everyone had the same reaction when they found out what happened. Shock. Disbelief. This was Carmen. Sweet Carmen who minded her business and loved her boys. Detectives pulled surveillance footage from the building. And that's when they saw him. Clear as day. A man entering the building. A man with a mask on. Moving with purpose. A man who found a spot and waited. The timestamps didn't lie. He was there for over 2 hours before Carmen arrived. Just sitting. Just watching the door. Just waiting for her to come home so he could kill her. One neighbor told investigators they saw the person leave after it happened. He went past. He has mask on, they said. The neighbor let him pass, not knowing what had just occurred upstairs. Not knowing they had just watched a murderer walk away. But Marquez didn't get far. By Monday afternoon, he showed up at a hospital in the Bronx. And here's the thing. He had cuts on his hands. Cuts that you get when you're gripping a knife so hard while you're stabbing someone that the blade slips. Cuts that tell the story of what you just did. Hospital staff noticed. They contacted authorities. And when police showed up to question him, they were told Marquez had to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Oh, so now you need a psychiatric evaluation? After you just sat in a building for 2 hours planning a murder? After you stabbed a woman over 20 times while she begged you to stop? Moving on. Police sources confirmed what everyone already suspected. This was Carmen's ex-boyfriend. The man she had said no to. The man she had walked away from. The man who couldn't accept that she had the right to choose her own life. He was arrested right there at that hospital. They took him into custody while he was still in the clothes from the murder. Blood evidence. Cuts on his hands. Surveillance footage placing him at the scene. This wasn't a mystery. This wasn't a whodunit. They had him. Back at the building on West 129th Street, Carmen's family started to gather. Her sister, her aunt, cousins, friends, they all came. Standing outside that building, holding each other, crying, trying to make sense of something that made no sense. 4 boys were inside somewhere, being told that their mother was never coming home. 4 boys who would have to figure out how to live in a world without her. Detectives were still gathering evidence, still piecing together the timeline, but the story was already clear. Marquez had decided that if he couldn't have Carmen, nobody could. So he planned it. He waited for her. And he took her life in the most violent way possible.
Family members embraced outside the Harlem apartment where a mother of 4 came home to a vicious surprise attack hours earlier.
She was saying like, "Oh, stop, get away from me."
Neighbors were startled awake from the 47-year-old screams in the stairwell. But a neighbor said that it wasn't unusual for people in the building to have loud arguments.
Thinking about it now, I do feel bad because I heard that scream and I probably possibly could have stopped it.
She was like, yelling, "Stop Luis, stop Luis, stop Luis."
The building's porter was doing trash rounds around 4:30 a.m. when he made the grisly discovery on the 3rd floor.
I saw her on the floor, her, at 4:21, this morning. And, she was passed away. That's what killed me.
LaRon Middleton said she was lifeless, steps from her apartment door by the time paramedics came, stabbed roughly 18 times.
She was running and blood just dripping, then she stopped right in the middle, and that's where she probably collapsed.
Police were covering surveillance video from the building on West 129th Street, appearing to show a man lying in wait for 2 hours before the victim came home.
The person came out. He went past, but he had mask on. This person, I let him go past, and I'm upset about that.
Sources say the suspect was arrested at a Bronx hospital Monday afternoon in clothing from the murder scene with cuts to his hands.
At this time, we're still gathering information, and we're still just connecting with the police office.
And they told you they had the man in custody, right?
I am aware.
Marquez was formally charged with murder. When they brought him in, cameras caught him keeping his head down, refusing to answer any questions. The man who had the audacity to wait 2 hours to kill Carmen suddenly had nothing to say, suddenly wanted to be quiet. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, the cuts on his hands, his presence at the scene, Carmen's blood on his clothing. The prosecution didn't have to work hard to build their case. Marquez had essentially documented his own crime through his actions. He was held without bail, and the legal system began its slow march toward justice. Days after Carmen's murder, her family and friends gathered outside that same building on West 129th Street. But this time, they weren't coming to grieve in private. They were there to light candles, to speak her name, to make sure the world knew what happened to Carmen Yadira Lopez. The cold night air hung heavy as people formed a circle. Some brought flowers, some brought photos of Carmen, smiling in happier times. Her family members, emotionally crushed, stood together trying to find strength in each other. And at the center of it all were 4 candles, one for each of her boys, one for each son who would never hear his mother's voice again, one for each child who would grow up with a hole in his life that could never be filled. "This is for our beautiful angel," someone said to the crowd. "We remember her because her life now is in every single one of us. Her light is in her 4 children. Carmen's light was in her children. Those 4 boys who still had to wake up every morning and figure out how to exist in a world where their mother was gone, who still had to go to school, do homework, eat dinner, celebrate birthdays, all without her. They didn't ask for this. They didn't do anything to deserve this. But because one man couldn't accept the word no, they lost everything." Carmen's aunt stood there, tears streaming down her face, and said what so many family members of domestic violence victims have said before. She didn't deserve to die that way. And she was right. Carmen didn't deserve any of this. She deserved to raise her boys. She deserved to see them graduate, get jobs, maybe have children of their own one day. She deserved to grow old. She deserved to live. The aunt continued, her voice breaking. If they had only known anything about Marquez, they would have done everything to protect Carmen. Everything. But that's the cruel reality of situations like this. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes the danger is hidden. Sometimes the person threatening your loved one is someone they once trusted. Someone who knows how to blend in. Someone who waits in the shadows. Areli, Carmen's friend, stood at that vigil with one clear message. Justice would mean life behind bars for Marquez. Not a slap on the wrist, not a plea deal. Life. Because he took a life. He took a mother from her children. He took a daughter from her family. He took a friend from people who loved her. And for what? Because his ego couldn't handle rejection? Because he felt entitled to her? Areli remembered Carmen as someone who never seemed worried about Marquez. No, because she was a happy person, she said. Carmen didn't walk around in fear. She didn't let his possessiveness control her life. She said no and kept living. She kept being herself, joyful, loving, present for her boys. She refused to let him steal her happiness while she was alive. But in the end, he stole everything else. The vigil wasn't just about mourning Carmen. It was about sending a message. A message that needed to be heard loud and clear. We want to expose domestic violence for what it is. It's a crime. Let's talk about it, ladies. Because here's the truth. Domestic violence doesn't always look like what people think it looks like. It's not always visible bruises or screaming matches that everyone can hear. Sometimes it's a man who won't let go, a man who shows up places uninvited, a man who looks at you like you're his property, a man who can't accept that you have the right to walk away. And when women do walk away, when they say no, when they establish boundaries, that's often when they're in the most danger. The most dangerous time for a woman in an abusive relationship is when she tries to leave. That's when control turns to violence. That's when possession turns to murder. Carmen said no. She walked away, and Marquez made sure she paid for it with her life. A Harlem-based domestic violence awareness organization called WARM, which stands for We All Really Matter, stepped up to help cover Carmen's funeral expenses. because her family shouldn't have had to worry about how to bury her on top of everything else they were dealing with. WARM's mission is simple but critical. Raise awareness, support victims, and make sure people understand that domestic violence is not a private matter. It's not something to whisper about or ignore. It's a crime, and it kills. The organization reminds anyone who may be in fear for their own safety with a partner that resources exist, that help is available, that you don't have to suffer in silence. That saying no is your right. That leaving is your right. That living is your right. But the harsh reality is that even with resources, even with awareness, even with people trying to help, women are still dying. Partners and ex-partners are still killing them. And children are still being left without their mothers. Carmen's 4 boys will carry this trauma for the rest of their lives. They'll have questions that can never be fully answered. They'll have anger that may never fully resolve. They'll have birthdays and holidays and graduations where their mother's absence will be felt in every moment. They'll hear other kids talk about their moms and feel that sharp pain of loss all over again. And for what? So Marquez could feel powerful for 2 hours while he waited in that building? So he could feel in control while he held that knife? So he could prove some twisted point that if he couldn't have her, nobody could? 4 boys, 1 mother, 20 stab wounds, 2 hours of waiting, and a life that mattered, reduced to a crime scene. Carmen's family made sure to say her full name at that vigil. Carmen Yadira Lopez. Not just the victim, not just a woman. Carmen Yadira Lopez. A person, a mother, a friend, someone who laughed and loved and lived until someone decided she didn't have the right to anymore. When no means no, it means no. That phrase was repeated at the vigil, and it's a phrase that needs to be repeated everywhere, constantly, until it sinks in. Women are not property. Women are not prizes to be won or kept. Women have the right to choose who they love, who they leave, and how they live their lives. And men who cannot accept that truth are dangerous, period. Carmen thought she had made herself clear. She thought no was enough. She thought ending the relationship meant it was over. But Marquez had other plans. Plans that involved surveillance, waiting, and violence. Plans that involved making sure she never said no to him again. The vigil ended with candles still flickering in the cold Harlem night. People hugged. People cried. People promised to remember Carmen and to fight against the system that allows this to keep happening. Because Carmen is not the first. She won't be the last. But every single woman who dies at the hands of a current or former partner is one too many. Her boys will grow up. They'll become men. And maybe, just maybe, they'll be the kind of men who understand that love doesn't control. Love doesn't possess. Love doesn't wait in stairwells with knives. Love doesn't ignore the word no. Maybe they'll break the cycle. Maybe they'll honor their mother by being better than the man who took her from them. But they shouldn't have had to learn that lesson this way. They should still have their mother. Carmen should still be here, nagging them about homework, cooking their favorite meals, embarrassing them in front of their friends the way mothers do. She should be here. Instead, she's a name on a candlelight vigil, a case number in a police file, a story on a true crime channel, and 4 boys have to figure out how to be okay when nothing will ever be okay again. Carmen Yadira Lopez mattered. Her life had value. Her light was real. And the fact that Marquez extinguished it doesn't change any of that. If anything, it makes it more important to say her name, to tell her story, to make sure she's not forgotten. To know her was to love her. And now, even those who never met her can understand what was lost that Monday morning in Harlem. A mother, a friend, a woman who deserved so much better than what she got. Rest in peace, Carmen Yadira Lopez. Your 4 boys carry your light. Your family holds your memory. Hit that subscribe button. We're here to make sure women like Carmen are never forgotten. If you know someone in a dangerous relationship, speak up. Get help. Your life matters. Drop a comment, share this video, and we'll see you next time with another story that needs to be told. This is Shadowed Crimes TV. Stay safe.